Good afternoon. This is a very different feeling today than it was last night. To the May 29th council work session. We are actually going to go into executive session pursuant to ORS 192.6602E to deliberate with persons designated to negotiate real property transactions. Representatives of the news media and designated staff shall be allowed to attend the executive session. All other members of the audience are asked to leave the room. Representatives of the news media are specifically directed not to report on any of the deliberations during the executive session except to state the general subject of the session as previously announced. No decision may be made in executive session. At the end of the executive session, we may return to open session and welcome the audience back into the room. And I am assuming that Claire will be coming. We don't have word that she won't be. Okay, and so we're just missing Greg and Chris as before. Okay, so. Should we wait for the? executive session. He's got us. All right. So welcome back. We're back into a public session, and we have a motion on the table about the Northwest. No, we will have a motion on the table. And so we'll turn that over to
I move to direct the city manager to schedule a public hearing on a possible one-year extension of the franchise with Northwest Natural.
Second.
Any discussion, explanation around this? All right. All in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. None opposed, so that passes. Thank you. Thank you very much, all of you, and thank you. I think that was the right call. Okay. Our next order of business, a review of the 2018 implementation of the bond measure to fix streets and the 2019 pavement management.
Anytime you're ready,
Okay.
let's do it.
All right. Good afternoon. My name is Jennifer Willer, and I am Principal Civil Engineer in Public Works Engineering, and I was the facilitator for the Street Repair Review Panel as well. And I have a presentation here that I would like to review the program with you, and I think the slides have been handed out to you. And I think most all of you have probably heard this before, but let me know if you have any questions. I think we got plenty of time here to go through this. But just a reminder, so today I'm here to talk about the 2019 Pavement Management Report. So it's our annual report that talks about what the condition of our streets are in the system, as well as go over the 2018 Street Repair Review Panel Report, which is an annual report that they put out. And so starting off with the pavement management report that we went through, each year Public Works Maintenance produces this report on the state of the city's pavement preservation program and the condition of streets. Just a reminder that Eugene Public Works manages 543 centerline miles, and that comes out to what most of our pavement preservation program talks about things in terms of lane miles, which is basically just translating everything to a 12-foot wide lane. And that way we have a better sense of how much actual pavement we're managing, because a 5-lane road, if we just talk about center lines, isn't the same as the same center line miles of a 2-lane street. Of this total 1,247 lane miles are the improved street. When we go through the rating system, arterials and collectors are evaluated every year. Residential local streets are evaluated every 3 years. And the off-street bike path system are evaluated every 2 years. When they go through and do the evaluation, they record all the pavement surface distresses, and that is including the severity and the extent of those distresses. So how much of the street is covered with distresses, how bad are they? They will also identify preliminarily what is the needed work on the street, and a lot of times that's based on how much pavement thickness is there, what is the subgrade soils like under there, and how old is the street. And they'll figure out what kind of work might be needed so that we can start estimating how much of a need there is across our system. And then one of the terms that you'll hear talked a lot about in the pavement management world is the backlog of the system. So when the needs exceed how much money we have in any given year, then we have a backlog in our system. So this is a review of the 2019 Pavement Management Report, and I started off with the unimproved paved streets. So we have 109 lane miles of the unimproved paved street system, and just like last year, we continue to project that the streets that are in poor condition continue to decrease. And the Public Works Maintenance Division is projecting that all unimproved streets that are paved will be treated within the next 7 to 10 years. On the off-street path system, This, again, is the condition. The last time we rated the off-street path system was 2017, so this graph looks a lot like the one that you saw last year, with one exception. The miles in the green, as far as excellent condition, is increased by about 1 mile because we built Jessen Path in this period of time. So that's the only difference to this slide. And then this slide is just a review of the payment preservation backlog. And this has some historic information. I'm sure that a lot of you kind of recall how we got here back in 2007. We projected that the backlog was going to reach $282 million by 2016 based on the current available funding. Thanks to a series of the bond measures that have passed, we continue to see that backlog amount decrease over time, and you can see the overall general trend of that going down. A majority of the backlog at this point does occur on local residential streets, which is by far the biggest part of our system. And this is just kind of another way of looking at the same picture, but more on an annual basis. So this is looking at how much money would it take on an annual basis to preserve or address the needs on the system and maintain any street from prevent any street from falling into a reconstruct category. And so back in 2008, we projected that we would need $27 million a year to prevent any street from falling into reconstruct and eliminate all the reconstructs in 10 years. Based on the 2018 data, we're now estimating that number to be about $14.2 million a year. And so how does our current funding compare to that $14.2 million? Well, we have a local gas tax here in Eugene that's 5 cents a gallon, and that generates about $3 million a year. And the street repair bonds have generally come up around $8 to $9 million a year over the various bond programs that we've had. So that gets us fairly close to the $14.2 million, but there is still a little bit of a gap, which is why we generally show as soon as a little while after the bond measure ends, you start seeing that line go down of streets that are in excellent and good condition, and you start seeing the streets that need overlays or even reconstructs to kind of start climbing up a little bit. So the 2012 bond measure was passed under Measure 20-197, and it included $43 million to fund street preservation projects. About $500,000 of that went to active transportation, and it included 76 named streets. And in 2018, we completed the 5th of 5 years that were funded under this bond measure. And as we go, I'm going to kind of point out the pictures here too, because these are some of the projects that we completed in 2018 under the bond measure. So this first picture is Garfield Street in Ward 7. And if you've driven that street over the last number of years, you knew that that was a pretty horrible condition street. And I was just reminded earlier this month when we had Public Works Day, driving down that street, because that's where all the buses were coming in, what a huge difference the bond measure made, because the pavement is wonderful, but we also worked with railroad companies, because there's two of them that have multiple crossings on that street. We were able to eliminate 2 of the crossings that were unused on that street, as well as upgrade the pavement condition of all the railroad crossings. So that made a huge difference in this area. So just a reminder, the resolution for the 2012 bond measure required the formation of a citizen street repair review panel. It required an annual report from that panel documenting the use of the bond, and it also required an annual report from an outside auditor. And in addition, so these were in addition to just the accountability provision of just naming the streets in the bond measure. So if you recall, the bond measure had a set list of named streets. And this is a picture of West Amazon Drive in Ward 2 that was repaved. So the panel this last year consisted of 12 members, and I know at least 2 of them walked in with me. Gary Wildish and Sue Walling, I think, are here. Did anybody else show up? Doesn't look like. But the SRP represents a variety of interests. We have people from the Chamber of Commerce. We have active transportation interested folks. eWeb has a representative on the panel. We have retired public works professionals, League of Oregon women voters interest is on that panel. We have people from construction industry, and then we also just have interested residents that have participated. In fact, the chair of the panel, he was an interested member of the public that started attending meetings, and eventually we asked him to be officially on the panel, and he was our chair this year. And this picture is I think it's Larkspur Avenue. It's in Council Ward 5, and it was part of a 6th Street local street package that we did all in that neighborhood. So in 2018, we did 16 street rehabilitation projects, which consisted of more than 13 lane miles. And we also did a variety of work on active transportation projects. There were a couple of things that the SRP asked for me to highlight in my presentation to you, and they also talked about it in their memo, but they wanted to highlight that Eugene continues to be a leader in the use of warm mix asphalt, reclaimed asphalt pavement, and in-place recycling. And they really appreciate that we're constantly looking for ways to increase the amount of work that we do. So, for example, we just rarely do the kinds of projects where a traditional reconstruct where we dig everything out and rebuild it from the bottom up again. And that can be really expensive. It can have huge impacts to the people that live and work around there. And so the fact that we find all sorts of creative and innovative ways to avoid that situation not only saves us a lot of money, but it saves us in waste materials and ends up with a much better product. Another item that the SRP wanted me to highlight is that we are routinely partnering with other agencies to leverage the money that we have available. So sometimes it means that we will kind of adjust the timing of our projects so that we can cooperate with other agencies, or we're going out and getting grants and we're using the bond money to be our local match for those programs, so that we're ended up only using the bond funds for like 20% of the project cost. And so this is a picture of 7th Place. That's between Highway 99 and Bailey Hill. And I have a description of it better on the next slide. I chose a few projects just to highlight that kind of illustrate some of these benefits that I was talking about. And so 7th Place is one of those ones that, like a Garfield Street, we removed some abandoned railroad tracks and a hump that was in the road that went over those abandoned tracks. The street was subject to some really heavy traffic loading from industrial use, and it was in terrible condition. It's one of those streets that we thought would need to be fully reconstructed. And once we started going into it and exploring what the existing structure and rock underneath the road was, we realized that the pavement was just too thin for the amount of traffic that was using it, and we could actually remove that pavement, a little bit of the base rock, and repave that street without having to dig out all the rock that was underneath it, and get a street that will last for another 30 years. So that significantly decreased the cost that we expected the project to be. We also reallocated underutilized lanes to add bike lanes on the street, so we got a pretty long stretch of bike lanes installed. This is a project. Typically when we have local residential streets, because they're such small projects, we try to group them together so that we can kind of maximize the efficiencies and the cost of the project. And so this is one of those groups of projects of local residential streets in Council Ward 4. And we rehabilitated all of these streets by recycling the existing pavement and base rock in place and repaving the street on top of it. So again, streets that typically you would think you have to completely just dig out and replace, we're finding ways of getting a long life product for much less money.
Jennifer, do you also add ADA ramps if they don't have them?
We do. So one of the rules that we fall under is that Federal Highway Administration has mandated that everybody, when you repave a street, needs to bring the ramps that cross the street into compliance. So that's why when you see us repaving all these streets, that you see every corner is upgraded. And we have a very careful and cautious program that we really take care to make sure that we're building these ramps that they'll be compliant. I know it was a topic of conversation with the SRP because we had one resident along one of our streets, it's also on the SRP, that said, you know, I saw the contractor, they placed that ramp and then they had to redo it again, and you know, what a waste of money. And it was one of those things that if we caught that it wasn't quite right, we would make sure that it's redone and make sure that we're getting the exact right one in place. Thank you. So also as part of the bond funding, with the 2012 bond measure, we had a little over $500,000 a year go to active transportation projects. So we did a variety of things across the city. This 2018 projects was a really good example of places where we partnered with other agencies to maximize or leverage that money that we spent. So 4J had some bond measure money that they needed to spend on safe routes to school, and so we partnered with them to not only do projects that would complete some of their bond measure projects, but also expanded that and added our own to it as well. And so that one leveraged quite a lot of money. We also did a project where we got a grant from ODOT to put in some more electronic bike lockers across the city, and we used bond funds to match that grant as well. And so this slide is the concluding statement by the Street Repair Review Panel that says that after they reviewed all the projects and discussed the project information with us, that they concluded that we followed the bond. And yeah. Kind of ran out of a sentence there to say. This next slide is also, we had an independent accountant review the project, and it's in your packet, the actual letter from them, but this is a statement that basically that they reviewed all our expenditures incurred during the calendar year, and that involved them reviewing pay estimates, invoices, timesheets, other project expenditures, and not only were they looking at just whether or not we met the requirements of the bond, but they also looked to make sure that we were meeting our legal obligations just in public contracting. And so they reviewed all that paperwork and came back and said, yes, we spent everything correctly. And this next slide is that this is more of a reminder. Last year when I came to you, we projected that we would have about $3 million left over from the 2012 bond measure, and I presented a list of, I think it was, I have it here on the next slide. It looks like it's 6 streets. And so the council approved us spending the excess funds on those 6 streets, and I'm here to tell you that all 6 of those streets are either in the process of being advertised for construction or under construction at this time. So we were able to jump on those really quickly. And I think that was my last slide. So I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Great, thank you very much. I have Mike in the queue. Anybody else with a Claire? Okay, take it away, Mike.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you for that great presentation. I appreciate that over the years that we've done this bond and spent it the way we have, and involved the public the way we have, I think the community has confidence in our ability, at least here, if nowhere else, to do what we say we're going to do and to do a good job with it, and that's awesome. Kurt Corey, God rest his soul, used to do something almost every time he made some kind of presentation around funding and road work with us that involved a three-legged stool. And that's the only part of this where I was wondering, for those maybe more than anyone else watching at home, could you go through the funding sources? I saw the piece there that with our local gas tax, we have about 3 million a year. Is that in total or just towards this particular type of work?
So both. That's in total, and it goes just to this type of work. And that is really the only capital funding that goes to this type of work outside of bonds or if we go and get grants. So in the past, we've used some federal grants to help pay for payment preservation as well.
So the rebuilding essentially of a road is going to be capital-oriented,
Right.
use of bonds, local gas tax to build the road or rebuild the road, where ongoing maintenance and repairs, and that's generally state gas tax. Do I have that right?
Correct.
So there's no other pots of property tax money that go towards road repairs or maintenance, is there?
That's correct.
So when we see, for example, presentations that compare property taxes to the expense of road mile maintenance of roads, that's not really a comparison that makes sense because we don't use any general fund or property tax revenue to do that, do we?
Right. I mean, anybody can jump in if they want, but that is correct that we do not use general funds for road maintenance or for capital payment preservation.
We had a presentation like that recently, and that's why I wanted to just make sure that everybody was clear about
Okay.
that. Thank you very much.
Okay, Claire and then Alan.
Thank you. Thank you so much for this presentation, and thanks to our citizen members for scrutinizing the work and giving it a unanimous approval of getting our work done the way we said we would, in the manner we said we'd do it. So I just wanted to mention a couple of personal things in terms of my usage of the road. I've just only recently, well, I guess in the last several months, started traveling on West Amazon, and I was traveling through it when it was being worked on, and now that it's finished, it is very nice. But Seventh Place is a road that I traveled on frequently before it was upgraded, and now that it's finished, I'm traveling on it again. And you know, ever since I went through my cancer treatment, I'm especially sensitive to our bumpy roads, and it is such a nice improvement. It is amazing how, I mean, it's like glass. So whoever the contractor was on that, kudos to them, because I'm just very impressed with the quality of the work there. And I really like the reconfiguration. You know, the lanes were changed, and I didn't even notice until my husband pointed it out to me. He's like, yeah, they got rid of the second lane, and now they have bike lanes. I was like, oh, yeah, you're right. I mean, it just works really well. So
Great.
not only was it done well, but the engineering was done in a really smart way. So I just wanted to appreciate that.
Great, thank you.
Alan.
Yeah, thank you to Public Works and you, all the great job fixing and maintaining our roads. They are in so much better shape than they were when we first started doing the road bonds way back when. And thanks to the Citizen Committee for doing their job. Sue and Gary, thanks for showing up, and thanks for the work that you've done on that. Can you get to slide 6? That's my favorite graph. That one just shows the whole story, which is the bar graph. One more, 2 more. That one. Yeah, that one. I mean, it's exactly what we want to see, right? Which is the number of poor streets dropping, the number of excellent streets and good streets going up and up. I guess the only one that's kind of goofy is that the fare went up a little bit, but that's because some of those poors moved into the fare, looks like. hard to tell, but,
Well, and this graph is for the unimproved street system too,
Yeah.
so.
yeah. I think that's, yeah, for the 109 miles of unimproved
Right.
streets. But that's exactly what we're trying to see happen. The other one is the two forward, number 8, which is that backlog dropping dramatically, going, we started with $280 million, now we're down to 68 million. That's exactly what we want to see happen. Of course, problem with this whole setup is that if we stop doing the bonds, that starts to go back up. So if we want to keep the backlog going towards the zero line and the maintenance of the streets, then we have to keep doing this. So that means the next slide was a little bit confusing to me. So in 2008, we said to keep the backlog from getting worse, we need $27 million a year. Now we need 14. Is that because-
So the reason why that drops off so much is because we've addressed a lot of reconstructs. So now when we have to do the annual preservation, it's more about preserving what's there and not having to start over from scratch again.
Right, because redoing a street completely is way, way, way more.
Right, I mean, we typically talk about that in like 4 to 5 times more expensive
5
to
times.
reconstruct it as to just preserve it.
And I appreciate you do what's necessary as opposed to just what we should do by the book, which is an example you gave where we just took off the layer and then took off a little rock and then redid it.
Right.
Need to do everything from scratch. That makes a whole lot of sense. Makes me feel a whole lot better about it. But overall, program's working exactly like we said it would. And this is one of those promises made, promises kept. And thank you for the report.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else with comments? I also want to echo comments that others have made, but I think this is always a revelation for me because I don't really know anything about street construction. And it's so, I was actually interested even just in the opening graph of the little, the thawing and the freezing and the whole. So I really appreciate the whole presentation that you've given us in terms of just a sort of framework of how this work is done and why it's done and the elimination of speed bumps and getting rid of a couple of railroad crossings and all of the pieces that went into it. It's, it's so thorough and deliberative, and it's very helpful to me just in understanding the nature of the work, as well as being appreciative that it's been done well, and that, my gratitude for the street review panel that really looked over the work. So thank you very much. And, one more comment.
Maybe Public Works, if they had somebody that was savvy with media, they could do a life of a pothole
Right.
video and see how that.
That'd be a bestseller.
You'd probably be surprised. You put on YouTube and get 100,000 hits in a week.
That's right. Well, that's unfortunately for the next time when we have to go back for a bond again in order to stay up on this.
Birth and life of a pothole.
All right, I think that completes that item. Thank you very much.
you.
And I just want to, we're early, and we did not do committee reports and items of interest. I don't know whether, does anyone, Betty, did you have a burning issue that you want to talk about, that you missed a chance?
I don't know if it's burning or not.
Okay.
I wanted to say something about school speed zones. I frequently drive back into town from Mount Pisgah on 30th Avenue, and when I slow down for the 20 mile per hour, people get really impatient. And a couple of days ago, I was passed by, as soon as I pulled over to turn on my street, I was passed by a number of cars that were speeding and a school bus that was speeding too. And I wonder, and I have the same experience when I drive occasionally out Coburg Road, the school speed zone, people do not observe at all. And I think we should do something about that. And I wanted to say something about the Budget Committee and our adoption of a recommended budget. We, what I consider rather casually, decided to fund a full-time person for cultural something or other, cultural outreach, in spite of the fact that we seem to be short of money for essential things. One of the essential things, or I consider essential, that happened about 12 years ago. Council passed a motion to hire someone to serve as assistant to the 8 counselors, comparable to the one person who serves the mayor, I think still does. And that motion was passed. I don't know whether it's because of budget or not, but that person that never happened. A person was hired, but things got shifted around and she ended up being the mayor's assistant. So we were supposedly going to have someone, and we actually passed the motion to keep track of our appointments if we wish, to get rides for us or whatever we needed, divided among 8 people. And if we didn't, that's one of the things maybe we should have considered, something we already passed, before we decide to create a new position. I think that not only that, we should consider, if we're going to make another ongoing big expenditure, and it is big, as Mike pointed out, there are benefits, that isn't just salary, and it's an ongoing expense. We should have a discussion about other things we need or are committed to, that, and compare them and decide which one is most important, rather than just casually, because of some group asked for it. And that, I'm sure they spent a lot of time, but there are other groups who spend a lot of time thinking about things too. We should, before we just decide to do something, we should consider other possible things. Thank you.
Thank you. Emily?
Thank you. I just wanted to bring another report from the Budget Committee. I know not many people watch that. We passed to recommend to Council a motion for $120,000 for increased restrooms downtown, accessible, clean, safe restrooms. Went through a lot of scenarios of possible plans and determined that we needed a little more thinking about it. But it is ongoing funding, so if our first stab doesn't work out quite right, we can make modifications. One of the things I'm interested in is making the parking garage bathrooms, that they just need some cleaning and paint and vinyl. And then most of the money can go towards attendance and monitoring, which is pretty critical for safety. And so I'm looking forward to us passing that, and I'm grateful to the Budget Committee for their support. And I know that so many people are concerned, businesses, people who need to use them, residents, visitors, and I hope this will start to make an impact. Thanks.
Mike?
Thank you, Mayor. I agree with everything Betty said there at the end with regard to the budget process. And I have 2 process-related items. Number one, we don't typically do this, at least I don't think so. But Mr. Manager, I guess I would request that in next year's budget, I would love to see us do more to tell the story of our budget as aligned with the values of our city and our vision and our mission and our goals. So that when it comes time for us to have, and I really would much prefer a budget process where we were kind of at least helped to make the kind of arguments we're going to make about what are competing priorities to spend money on within the framework of our mutual community goals and vision and values. I think that's the place where we can have a better level of discussion, but certainly where when we will then naturally have a discussion of competing things and how to decide best amongst them, rather than just this tack-on Christmas tree kind of process at the end. It's never very comfortable for me. The second thing is, I would hope that our next process session, we could spend just a couple of minutes on the public forum. I would be willing to make a bet that each of the folks at the table will have in their own minds, for one person or another over a period of time at the public forum, said, there's 3 minutes I'll never get back. And I know I can think of a couple of folks that speak pretty regularly where, yep, there's 3 minutes, I'll never get back. There are folks who speak repeatedly every time and say the same things, and there are folks who don't take it seriously, and there are those who are there to vent their particular process of mental health exercise. I would like to see us tighten that up somehow so that it doesn't feel like we're sitting for 2 or 3 hours to get a few folks who are going to say something really worthwhile that we really absolutely I feel good about. We need to hear, we need to know. And that's the hard part for us, I think, is gleaning that useful stuff out of sometimes difficult stuff. But I think we can clean that up so that we don't sit for 2 or 3 hours every Monday night to listen to largely a lot of stuff that is irrelevant to our work, in my opinion. So I hope we can talk about that at a process session.
All right, Claire.
Thank you. I think that is an interesting suggestion, and I would even frame it a little bit differently, that it's 3 minutes of the public's time that's not been well used.
Agreed.
Yeah. So I just, in items of interest, wanted to draw councilors' attention to a letter that we all received from the River Road Community Organization that's addressed to Homes for Good, the housing agency for Lane County, regarding concern about a development that is proposed on Lombard Avenue, which originally was a piece of land that Homes for Good had acquired in order to build affordable housing, and they made a strategic decision for their organization not to build affordable housing there, but instead sell it to a developer, and that developer happens to be the same Echo Apartments, which is developed further up River Road. I don't know what role the city can have in any of this situation, but we are being asked to engage in it. And I did meet with a constituent some months ago, and I think other councilors might have met with him as well to talk through some ideas of what the city might do. So I may be talking to the city manager further about this and other city staff to see if there's some role that we could play, whether it's encouraging a different outcome for the land. It is in the Willamette Greenway, some bit of it, and my understanding is the way the development is going through the planning commission process right now, or is maybe being appealed, it's using, all of its capacity to build on the site and isn't necessarily taking into consideration its impact on the river path and nearby land. And I will just add that the Echo Apartment was part of the cause of us acquiring jurisdiction over county streets near that apartment because of the overflow parking from the apartment they built on city land next to county roads. And, while I couldn't say they've been a bad neighbor, they may not have been the most overachieving in terms of attempting to be excellent neighbors. And so I think the folks on Lombard and also folks who use the bike path may have cause to be concerned. So I do take seriously a vote from our River Road board for us to look into this, and I'll be doing what I can to follow up.
Okay, great. Jennifer.
Thank you. Well, thanks for looking into that, Claire. I appreciate that. So I'm actually going to agree with Mike and Betty, even though I am very much in favor of the multicultural position. I think we should be looking at the budget as a set of priorities and how we're balancing different things. And if we could have, I find that somewhat frustrating when we are doing the budget. If there are ways that we can integrate that in so it's a little more obvious, I would be very much in favor of that. I was wondering, the actual thing I want to talk about is if you could update us on this canopy situation in the Free Speech Plaza. I just don't 100% know all of the particulars, and I assume you're keeping more tabs on it.
I may be keeping more tabs. I don't know 100% of the situation. What we do want to do and will do is to figure out how to resolve it in a way that can provide a place for people to be there that's appropriate. So whether it's canopies or whatever that is, I think we want to explore that to do that. We want it to be safe, we want it to be accessible, and we also want people to be able to engage in the legal activities there as well. And so that's what we're going to try to do to resolve that. Our intent is to try to figure out how to resolve it and not have to keep revisiting this every week. And so that's what we're endeavoring to do.
So is the getting rid of the canopies addressing illegal behavior?
So part of the canopies, one is, remember, we're working with the county also on this.
Right,
And so
right.
they own it, and so we're trying to also work with them in the management of it, as well as the Saturday market and farmers market. So all folks are engaged at that. There was some concerns around the safety, a piece of that. I think my understanding is a bunch of that has been mitigated already, and so I think there's some ways that we can try to perhaps reintegrate canopies into it, or something could be similar. We do have also safety that we want to ensure. So somebody just setting up a canopy needs to be sort of appropriately anchored and things like that, and we can work on those kinds of things. So we're going to try to figure out how to do all of that and resolve this in a way that meets those goals of safety and accessibility, and people can engage in legal activities there, and again, try to do that so we don't have to keep coming back to it.
Right, and the Saturday market folks have security, is that the difference? I mean, I'm wondering why
yeah.
this is obviously not an issue in the farmer's market and the main Saturday market, or at least it does not appear to be, since their canopies
Yeah,
are not being taken away, so.
I don't know that level of detail. Somebody probably does. I just don't know that on that.
And so I'm not advocating anyway. I'm just trying to so to make sure that's clear. So is this ultimately a county decision because it's their property?
I don't
But
know.
you're
Catherine,
kind of-
you might know legally who it is. What I think from a practical standpoint, we're trying to work together to figure out a good solution. So legally, they may be the ones that legally hold the final key on it.
Final, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's their property, and what we had agreed to do was just implement our permitting program. And so it is still, ultimately, if they said we absolutely wouldn't want canopies, we wouldn't then actually allow the canopies. But as John stated, we're trying to work together on it, so I certainly wouldn't want to say, yeah, we're partners in this. We're
Right,
trying to
right,
figure out a solution. So, but yeah, it's not our property.
Okay, great. Thank you. I appreciate you getting my education level up on that.
Okay. Alan?
Yeah, thanks for asking that question, Jennifer. I had the same one. Good idea on the process session discussion about how to make the forum better and more useful. I agree with that. Today, there's a open house on Franklin Boulevard from 3:30 to 6:30 at the Romania Potato Chip Building there on Franklin. And then Jennifer and I were in the Police Commission retreat on a Saturday, during a beautiful Saturday morning. And a very good working group that we did, good group to work with. And I came out with our new work plan, talked about things like revolving the Police Commission locations that we spread around the city, and a whole bunch of really good stuff that we'll be hearing back at the council on our June 19th meeting when they report back out to us. I had a question about the old City Hall lot, which we no longer own, and my worst fear was that the bond would fail and then we'd have a parking lot there for the next decade. And I'm fearing that might come to fruition since they started putting the parking lot. I'm wondering if that's being done to code, or if there were any exemptions done to that. I know when the U of O wanted to convert the Romania lot into a parking lot, they had to adhere to the code, and they had to put in drainage and landscaping as per code, especially the drainage, because drainage off of parking lots goes directly into the river without any remediation in most cases. So can you address that now, or can you get back to us?
I think if I could get back to you with some of those details, it was intended to be a temporary use, not as a forever use. And we don't know what the county's plan is for that property, when they plan to go out again for a vote. If they choose to do that, we don't know that. So it's intended to be temporary. We can get back to you on more of the details about the specific project.
Yeah, and what temporary means, 'cause my understanding is that's a very short period of time, and,
20 years.
yeah, and it's not years.
Yeah, and part of it, you know, they're
Months.
using it's sort of an interesting method for sort of rolling out the pavement, right? So it's, and that particular material isn't intended to last forever either, and so there's a useful life on some of that as well. And so, but we can get back to you on that.
Great, thank you.
Okay, Betty, another round?
Oh, yes, thank you. After what Jennifer said, I was curious about the canopy thing. I was concerned. I was also curious, did those people have canopies last year and don't have this year? I mean, they were saying they made so much money last year and they can't this year, so I wondered, is it a different location, or did the regulations change?
Yeah, so part of the Free Speech Plaza was, for the last several years, there were concerns about safety and illegal activity in the Free Speech Plaza. And so working with the county, what we've tried to do is ensure that there's safe, legal, accessible activity going on in the Free Speech Plaza, and part of that was sort of the physical setup of the plaza. And so this is probably another one of those quicker, cheaper, lighter things that we try to do as we implement. Some things work, some things could be improved upon, and we'll keep adapting to improve upon. But so this year, there was a different operation on the Free Speech Plaza based on trying to ensure that it was safe and accessible and legal, which for the last several years, there was some concern about that. So it's been managed a bit differently, and we're continuing to try to work
It's the
through it.
same people there, the same people who were able to have canopies last year can't this year.
You know, I don't know specifically who's there or not there.
Well, they were saying they made,
If they had canopies last year,
Yeah.
they
Was it-
didn't necessarily have the ability to have them yet this year. So that is true, that there were some changes in the physical setup. So that is true.
thank you.
Okay, I have, everybody got their chance? I have just two quick ones. One, just following up, as you know, I went to Georgia last month on a walkability conference, and it was it's really through the Metropolitan Planning Committee, so it was orchestrated through LCOG, and our task in that was to come up with an action plan in terms of encouraging, you know, just walking and biking and healthy communities, partly funded by the Center for Disease Control. So we're in the process, this group that we met again today, we're in the process of sort of refining what that action plan looks like, and it's due on June 7th, but there are some pieces of it that I think are fun, and one of them is to really look at the difficulty of biking and walking safely between Springfield and Eugene underneath the I-5 overpass in that section, because it's sort of gnarly. And so thinking about that and whether there's a way in which we can sort of do a Sunday Streets kind of pop-up thing where things get shifted around there, and we try that as an experiment and have that in place for 2021, when we will have lots of visitors who are going to want to get from those hotels and from Springfield to Hayward Field and not have them be in their cars. So that's one of our possible items on our action plan. It's not all dialed in, but we're looking at that. So that sounds fun and interesting. And the other piece is my offer to all of you, which is that I came back with a commitment that I would every month promote a walk with the mayor. And so I would pick a ward and an area in a ward where there's something to look at, or people just want to get some exercise, or there's so I put this out for you as counselors. If you have some neighborhood streets that you think it'd be either good for me to see or for those constituents to have an opportunity, so rather than knocking on their doors, we would promote a little walk with the mayor on a Saturday morning. So just putting that out there, because I'm hoping to start that in June. And then one more piece, a slightly different topic, but following up on our joint meeting with eWeb, I have been meeting with Mindy Schlossberg from the eWeb Board, and I think I've mentioned this to all of you, so now I'm just going to say it collectively, which is a proposal that, that we have maybe beginning every other month, maybe ultimately on a quarterly basis, leadership meetings between the city council and the eWeb, and those are kind of following a pattern that the city manager and I have with the school superintendents. So the proposal is, and the plan is, that a couple of members of the eWeb board with a general manager, city manager, and the council leadership, right now Betty and Emily and I would meet every other month just to sort of check in what's on. So it would be an opportunity for us to make sure that we're doing a little better job of understanding what they're thinking about or what's on their deck, what we're thinking about, where we have questions, and then an opportunity for council leadership to report to the rest of you about what they have learned. So just that's coming, and I think we're sort of hoping to get that started this summer as well. Okay, that's my update. Any other pieces? Yes, Betty?
Do we get an update from you about your meeting with the school superintendent?
No, and I should do that. Good point, good point.
And I wonder if we could say things we wish they would do.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay,
Yeah,
I'm
it's-
just
yeah,
thinking,
Absolutely, yes, good
Okay,
point.
thank
Yep,
you.
Good point. Okay, thank you, and with that, we are adjourned. Thank you.